Oh, RebelCon's been fantastic. I think that, while we're in classes with the guys most of the time during the week, one of the things we're able to do here is we're actually able to interact with them. And, well, once you get to meet somebody in person, talk with them in person, the communication bandwidth increases. So this has been great. The people that I've met that are also trading, that I'm also in the Rebel pit with, and we are exchanging text messages back and forth, the camaraderie is just excellent. So I recommend anytime they have an in-person event, you got to come and attend.
Join us this December in Miami, Florida for Market Rebellion Live.
Yeah, that's the start.
That's the start, baby. Welcome, folks. If you're just tuning in for the first time, you are a lucky person because Pete and I have been doing the Rebel's Edge now for almost 3 full months, I think, Pete.
Yep.
And this is a fun show where we hit just 1 minute of macro. We give you 4 stocks that we're watching and trading that day, not just blabbing about them on TV, and 2 bits of unusual activity. And then we bring you a little sports. So all of that for the grand price of 0. And it streams live on Twitter, YouTube, as well as Market Rebellion site. All right, Pete, if you're ready, let's start with the 1 minute of macro. All right, I'll say the markets are a little nervous ahead of what is likely to be a big red wave tomorrow. They will not know the results, obviously, tomorrow, so expect more of the same tomorrow. What's your take, Pete?
My take is I'm looking at the dollar. The dollar is down. The market is essentially up, and that's the macro minute.
That's it. Bang. I guess I better. That's a wrap. All right. Let's dive into the real news of the day, Pete. This stock is up over 44% right now. Veru, V-E-R-U. And that's because long COVID is a real issue. A company I'm involved with, Pete, Tolavid is one of their products. Todos Medical is the company. But this one, Veru, got U.S. Food and Drug Administration to basically say their experimental treatment for long COVID and so forth, reducing death rate in the late stage trial. That's all good. But how about this part, Pete? Veru said a number of uncertainties with the data. And it's like, wow, it's up 44% on 40 million shares, and the FDA is saying uncertainties? What do you think?
I don't like that word ever being used when I'm talking about a drug that I'm going to take. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's a fact.
You know, John, it's pretty interesting. This is a stock that's had some ups and downs, and they do they're working on a lot of really great things in the cancer side of things, as well as obviously vaccines and so forth. So kudos to them, but that uncertainties line stood out for me as well. I didn't like hearing that. By the way, it's about a 20% short in this name, which is why I think you're seeing it up. It was up over 50% early on, then started to ease back a little bit. But this would be one of those names, John, that if I were to trade it, I would trade it with options. I would not be messing around with that stock because we've seen this thing go up and crash down, and we've seen it go up again and crash down. Right now, it's on one of these upswings. That's great, but I'll tell you what, you don't want to be on the wrong side of this either.
Right. I agree, Pete. And I don't know if the 40 million shares is that massive squeeze that we've seen in meme stocks from time to time as well. But I am with you. We've had some unusual activity in this one, believe it or not, Pete. Not recently, but I would be hitting the exits right here if I were long the stock still, which I am not. All right. What about SE, Pete? C Limited. JP Morgan on Friday took them to overweight. I didn't really see any news today, but bang, out of the gate, a bunch of JP Morgan reps must have been hitting that buy signal, buy, because it jumped like 11%. It's eased back to being up about 8%. Now they have, the good fortune of having a mobile game that is the third most popular on Google's Play. where you go to download apps for Androids and things like that. But man, I don't really like the fact that they've got some negative on the other side of their business. What do you think?
I would not chase this name for all the tea in China, John, or Singapore or whatever, because because this video game, as you mentioned, John, it's a very high one, right? I mean, it's like one of the top that there is out there. Here's the problem: they're losing the active users are not still as excited as they once were. As a matter of fact, the quarterly active users are down 15%. The paid users is down nearly 40%. So I think there's a little bit of something rumbling around out there. Oh, by the way, this stock was $363 at one point in time, and here it is hovering around 48, not far off of the 42 lows. I don't think you want to chase this one. It's a very interesting thing to look at, and it's definitely one of those high flyers that had its day. But I think as people have decided not to sit at home and play these video games to the same extent that they did, or at least they're getting bored with this one, I'd stay away, John.
Pete, their Free Fire, that's another one of their video games that they put out. It's been banned in India, and that is a huge market to basically be banned in. That's that negative that I was talking about. I agree with you. I think some of these games are getting long in the tooth, and that's why you've seen such a dramatic, 1 for 7 kind of fall off for this one. So yeah, I would not be picking it up on the dip. What about natural gas, Pete? I know you and I have been just bang, 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 pounding the table for nat gas. Take a look at UNG. That's the ETF that tracks it. It's up huge today. EQT up huge today as well. What's your take on, would you hold on or would you hit the exits?
I own this one, John. I own it. And we had some unusual option activity in it just a few weeks ago. The stock was around 41. Today, it's around 44. Love what we're seeing in this stock. It's a great move to the upside. I think what impresses me most about them, John, is year over year, their free cash flow is outrageous. I mean, they're now $590 million. A year ago, it was $99 million. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of what this company is able to do. LNG is obviously something that a lot of us have talked about for a real long period of time. You and I have talked about this name before. And for all those people out there who say, you guys have been a little bit negative lately. Well, let's just be honest. Over the last week or so, the markets have been down pretty significantly. So being negative has been the right direction. This one we're positive on. And this one I think is a stock, John, that has a lot more room to the upside. I like this name a lot. I think they're in the right space. And I think that there's a lot of reasons that this is a name that I think I'm going to hold on to for a little while longer.
Pete, just quickly, I was at a conference, a family office conference. We had a guy that's a former CIA guy there. We had a whole bunch of big portfolio managers and so forth. Warren Buffett's granddaughter was there as well. And she didn't say much about natural gas. She was into NFTs and so forth. But what I'll say is that you and I aren't the only ones talking about, really, if you don't want to see Europe go into a severe depression, not recession, depression, you better pray for higher temperatures, better than normal, warm temperatures for Europe. Because if it's cold, they're going to be in a world of hurt. But that means EQT and GLNG are just going to be killing it, Pete, which is why I'm holding on as well. So we're both on the thumbs up on this one. All right, let's take a look, Pete, at a final one. RBA. This is Richie Brothers. They basically do auctions and things like that, Pete, for equipment. And one of the companies that they decided to buy is IAA. And they're going to be spending a lot of money to get this stock, $7.3 billion, including $1 billion of debt. It's got the unanimous support of both boards, so I imagine this thing goes through. But wow, people are really hating on the stock today.
They're not just hating on it. They're absolutely 100% putting their hands out and hating the hell out of this thing, John. It's down 20% today. It's basically I think it is actually at 52-week lows. This is a $7 billion acquisition when you actually add in the debt that they also have on top of the market cap of $5 billion. You got $2 billion in debt. This is a big move, John. I don't know if it was the right move or not. They recently did crush it on their earnings, but they also missed back in February on their earnings. So, there's the ups and downs that these guys face. I don't know. This is a huge bite that they're taking into this industry, but I like the company, but I don't think that I like it down here, John, because of the fact that this is going to take some time to get all this piece together. And I think there's a lot of other opportunities out there for us that I think I'd wait before I had made any move on this particular name.
Yeah, and I'm in the same camp with you there, Pete. It's breaking below the February lows right now.
Yeah.
And one of the big reasons is in February, you know what the 10-year was, Pete? A heck of a lot lower than it is right now.
Yeah.
So not that everybody borrows based on the 10-year, but you can pretty much say that if the 2-year is up there, pushing 5, you're going to finance this, huge acquisition that you spoke of, Pete, along with retiring that debt at a huge rate compared to February.
Yeah.
So if they did this in February, I don't think the market would punish them as much as it's punishing them today because of that big debt burden that they're going to be carrying at triple the interest rates that they would have paid back in February. So that's my take on that one, Pete.
Yeah.
All right, let's do some unusual activity. Coinbase. This is one of those stocks. Of course, Kathy Woods has been buying it. We've talked about it a lot because of crypto and so forth, but they're buying puts like crazy in here, Pete. Stock $60 this morning. They're buying 13,000 of the November 50 puts. That's with the stock at 60, folks. So $10 lower than where we are right now. One of the reasons, Pete, could be not just about the price of crypto has gone down so much, but obviously one of the issues is tax loss selling. Take a look at a chart on this one and see where it has come from, and then get the idea that, a lot of people have a lot of losses in this one. Beginning of the year, it was $250. Now it's 55, double nickel. Ouch.
That is pretty brutal. I got an interesting one for you, John, with Walgreens. Now, on Friday, we had some option paper in Walgreens, okay? The stock was trading right around $37. They bought 10,000 of the November 11th, that's this coming Friday, 38 and 50 calls. They were 15 cents to 20 cents, John. Today, you want to know where they are? Well, the stock's at 39. Those things are trading very close to $1 or more. So a really nice, as you would say, bang or giddy up. Either way, it's a hell of a move. But they're not done. Then they decided to come back today, and we got a buyer of 6,000 of the November 11th. That's Friday, the 41 calls. And I was talking to one of our chart gurus today here at Market Rebellion, and you know what? He said the charts actually look like there might be a little bit more room to the upside. I liked hearing that. They're a buyer of 6,000 of these calls for 10 cents up to 14 cents. Very similar to what they bought just last Friday that exploded to the upside. So we are seeing even more of that. There's a lot going on behind the scenes with Walgreens as well, John. I really like seeing this kind of option paper in here. It's inexpensive, and it's also given a great opportunity. If there is a little bit more fuel in this stock to go a little bit higher, these options could explode, I think, over the next couple of days.
Yep. And for all the bad news, Pete, about, even my friend, your friend too, I suppose, Stephanie Rule, she's on MSNBC and, pretty much lib out there. And she was just ripping into Governor Hochul, the governor of the state of New York, about crime. And she said, hey, I go to my local Walgreens and everything's locked up because of shoplifting, because you guys aren't addressing crime and all that.
Right.
I think Walgreens had to close a lot of stores, Pete, and that's what really kind of propelled them to the downside a little. They could be bouncing back pretty quick here. I don't think those stores just reopened, but I do think that, a lot of the really doomsday view of how this company was doing was probably a little overblown. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, Pete, I know you did the sports huddle yesterday. And boy, did you have a lot to talk about after some phenomenal games, college and pro yesterday. Tell us a little bit about what you wanted to cover.
Well, I wanted to cover about the rankings, John, and I got sucked into this thing like everybody else. We all bought into Tennessee. I put them at number 1. The committee put them at number 1 as well. Well, I took them out of that number 1 spot and not even in the top 4 after the loss that they had to Georgia. That was one of the games that you and I talked about. We featured that whole game, and there were 2 games that really stuck out for us. That was number 1. The other one was Alabama going to LSU and how good LSU is and how many people decided, Brian Kelly can't coach anymore. Well, it turns out maybe Brian Kelly can coach. As a matter of fact, not only can he coach, but the guy actually has guts beyond words, because he said the heck with it at the very end of that game, John. Yep. And they end up beat Alabama with the 2-point play at the very end. Unbelievable finish. One of the best college football games I've ever seen. The Georgia game, and I say Georgia game because Tennessee decided not to show up. The Georgia game was actually a lot of fun to watch if you're a Georgia fan. Not so fun if you're a Tennessee fan, but Georgia's defense, unbelievable. Their offense, explosive once again. They took it to them. I will say this, Alabama has got to be one of the best, if not the best, two-loss team in the country, John. They lost on the final play with a field goal when they played up in Tennessee in that great game that was earlier in the year. And now they lose by 1 point to LSU. So they go from the top to basically about number 10 now, because they're a 7-2 football team. So that drops them out of this whole thing. Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State didn't look very good. Michigan continues to look great, but November 26th, they will play Ohio State. That's going to be the game of the year, especially in the Big Ten, but maybe in the country, because those two teams are always going to be very interesting and fun to watch. I think it's going to be a great game. But here's a question for you, John. Mm-hmm. If anybody from the Pac-12 can get into this top four and get into this playoff, here's what you've got. You've got Oregon, who lost game 1 against Georgia, and since then they've gone through absolutely everybody else, absolutely destroying everybody else. They're now 8-1. USC's 8-1. They lost at Utah. UCLA is 8-1. They lost at Oregon. Utah's got 2 losses now. So it looks to me like the only path is Oregon, and Oregon's got to win out. And I'll tell you what, you look at their schedule, there's a good reason they could potentially win out. So do they get in there, or who do you put in your top 4 right now?
Well, obviously when Ohio State and Michigan play, Pete, one of them drops. That's obvious. We don't know which one yet. I did meet Pete, by the way, the kid that does the DJing for the Michigan Wolverines at the stadium. And he said, ever since I did it for the Ohio State game last year and they won, Harbaugh says, you're playing at every game. And he also, DJ Ski is his name. And Pete, he also spins for the Vikings.
Oh, nice.
Just so you know, he's a Minnesota kid.
Wow.
So anyway, really smart NFT guy. We'll have to have him on our longer format show in the future. But you asked me about Oregon. Yep, I think that's the team out of the Pac-10. I think they do get in, because at the end of the year, when you lose, that means you're going to drop enough, even if it's just down to the wire. I think we're going to see whichever one loses, Ohio State or Michigan, is going to fall out of the top 4, which means they're not going to be part of the consideration going forward for the FBS. But I do think, Pete, that Georgia looks fantastic. Yeah. Again, I give Kelly all the credit in the world, because he put Mason in motion, and that's Jonathan Taylor's son, Mason Taylor. He put the tight end in motion. As soon as he sees what defense they're in and comes back from the right, he goes to the left. And as he's coming back to the right, as soon as he sees that he's got space, the freaking quarterback didn't even think, just bang, fired it right to him. And that was the one that put him in position to win the game. And then, of course, in overtime, I'm sorry, at that 2-point conversion. Sorry about that. But I just loved it, Pete. I thought that was a fabulous game. And, man, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about the Vikings and the bowling pins and all the rest that they were doing. But, you know, the only team they've lost to, Pete, is the only undefeated team in the NFL, the Eagles. That is the only team they've lost to. So at 7-1, the Vikings look pretty good.
Yeah, and getting into the pros, John, I'll tell you what, the Seahawks, I got shockers for you. And here's what I mean by shockers. Seattle was supposedly terrible, right? They lost this great guy in Russell Wilson. He was the guy that everybody liked. Turns out, John, he's not as likable as everybody thought he was in that locker room. I got that firsthand from some of the coaches and some of the players about him and what they thought about him in the locker room. And they were not that much of big fans of him. Just so everybody knows, he's not everything everybody thinks he is. But you know who they do like? Geno Smith. You know what they look like right now? Well, they're 6-3. They're on top of the NFC West. They're above the Niners and everybody else. They've won 5 of the last 6. Geno Smith is having an unbelievable year. 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's getting sacked a lot, but it's partially because he does like to move around a lot, John. He likes to run a little bit, but he uses the tight end. He does a great job. DK Metcalf is one of those guys who really seems to like Geno Smith a little bit more maybe than the previous guy. But then you got to go over to the Vikings. You're 7-1. You got Kirk Cousins. He's thrown for 2,000 yards. He's had 10 touchdowns in the last 6 games. He's spreading the ball around, and they went out and got him a tight end that they needed to do. TJ Hawkinson, great player, and all he did was catch 9 balls for 70 yards, John, against Washington in that win for the Minnesota Vikings to now be 7-1, sitting way up top in the Central. But then all of a sudden you got one more team. I got a third team for you. I'll bet you could probably guess who it is. But I'll tell you what, the Jets at 6-3, and I'm apologetic to all my buddies who are Bills fans, but I just got to say, what an incredible game. The defense of the Jets, Saleh has built that team just like they did with the 49ers, John. They got a bunch of big, tough, mean dudes on defense, a huge offensive line, and they're going to pound the ball on you. And that's what they're doing. It's exactly what the Jets format is for winning. Their defense this year, John, has 26 sacks. They got 11 interceptions, and they've got Sauce Gardner, who was a first-round pick, like the 4th pick in the draft. He's like a 6'3 or 6'4 kid out of Cincinnati, John. He is a freak show unicorn as a cornerback in the NFL. Love watching that kid. C.J. Mosley, the linebacker from Alabama, of course, he's from Alabama. He is a baller. That guy makes plays everywhere, and he is a big, mean son of a gun. I'll tell you what, John, the Jets might be one of the surprise teams of the year for me. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. And Pete, you just said, in Seattle, Geno Smith, let's not forget, he was a number 1 pick of the Jets. I mean, how many number 1? Sanchez, I think, as well. They've not done a great job, or they haven't had much luck with the quarterbacks and or the tutelage of those quarterbacks once they get them. Maybe it's the small hands, Pete. I'm not sure. but the kid they've got right now is certainly a leader, and that team is playing, like their lives are on the line. And that game, wow, 20-17, the Jets over the Bills. I know there were a lot of people that really took it in the shorts on that one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the last thing I'll say, John, is when you see a team that really likes each other and they're having success, but really likes each other, look at some of the video of the Minnesota Vikings after that win. It's against the Washington Commanders. For God's sakes, who cares, really? I mean, let's be honest. We both love the coach. Chico's the greatest guy in the world, but, it's a 4-5 football team. But you look at that locker room, you see Kirk Cousins dancing around. He's got necklaces all over his neck, diving around with all the other guys. They love him, John. They love Geno Smith, John. They love all these teams really, really like each other, and that helps when you have some down times. That helps too because it lifts you back up because all your guys are going to lift you up. These are teams that like their quarterback. They like their offense. They like each other, and you can see it when they're out there on the field.
Yep. When you look into that guy's eyes and he wants it as bad as you do, rather than him worrying about, well, who am I going to go out to dinner with when we get home and all that kind of stuff. Exactly. There's no thoughts like that with the Vikings, with Seattle, with the Jets, and I'm sure with the freaking Eagles, Pete, which are still just awesome. Just a wonderful team. Folks, we'll be back tomorrow with another Rebels Edge at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Remember, we've gone to 4 days a week now. We're going to be doing a little time slot change as well. But for now, we're 1 p.m. Eastern time. Please join us tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, and have a great day.